How to emboss a 3D printed part. So as we start to work with our parts and we build our skills for 3D printing, our first project was our Do Not Disturb sign. And so we're all in these Zoom meetings, and putting a sign on the door can keep people from coming in the room and disturbing you while you're creating a video. And so we used CAD to put these letters on. And when we used AutoCAD for it, we were using the bonus tools and the express tools for text. And we can see that in our assignment. Shown here. And so here's our Do Not Disturb sign. We model it and then we extrude the text. And you can extrude text and put something on there that's appropriate for yourself. But we want to have our main objectives of being able to have video conference Do Not Disturb. And so we used CAD to emboss it or to place a label. What you can also do is you can export it as an STL file and then bring it into a program called 3D Builder. And so 3D Builder is a program, and let me launch this from the beginning. 3D Builder is a Microsoft product that is used kind of as a go-between printing, 3D printing in CAD. And so I'm going to say New Scene, and then I'm going to open the STL file from my downloads. And so we know how to, so to export the STL file, what I'll do is I'll say Export, Other File Format, and then we'll change this to the STL file. Then this is the name file, and this is where the STL file is located. And there's other different file formats, but we want to use the standard triangle language. And so we can say student, and I'll just place it in my downloads. I'll say save. I'll select the part and I'll hit enter. And then what I'll do is I'll look in my downloads and I'll open my version of 3D Builder, and I can either drag and drop it in or I can open it. And so let's just go from the start where I go to my 3D Builder. I say New Scene, and then I like to just drag and drop them in, and so I can just drag and drop the file from my file, or you can go to the triple part and you can say Open and then navigate to your downloads. And so I'll say Load Object. So an object is a solid model file. We can also load images, which is really cool because you can take logos and convert them to solids. So I'm going to say Load Object, and then I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'll take my student STL file, and I'll bring that in. And it's properly orientated. In other words, it's orientated flat on the table here or in the scene. I'm going to bring this in millimeter units, and I'll say check. And now I have the component in 3D Builder. I'll click on it, and then what I will do is I'll go to Edit, Emboss, and then I'll add student name. You can have some fun with it if you want to add some color to it. You can add colors like here. And then we'll green check that. And then we can save it. And as we save it, what we'll do is we'll save as, and I prefer to stay with the STL format. And so we'll say STL format. 3MF format is another format that we can bring in for 3D printing. But I'll save it as student with name. And I'll say save. And just keep track of where that file is going. I'm keeping everything in my downloads at this time, but I usually put them in a folder for each of the files. But for now, we'll save it to our downloads and continue. And then they suggest that you use the 3MF format because it has some higher compatibility. But for right now, we're in the beginning stages of our 3D printing. And then what we'll do is we'll go into our 3D Builder file and we'll load that part in there. And so here's our, our slicer from Dremel Slicing. And I'm just going to remove the one that I had in here before. And I'm going to go and get the one that I just created. So I'll say Open File. I'll go to my Downloads. I'll select my STL file and I'll say Open. And then I'll set up the slicer. And so I'm going to slice it with PLA, low quality. I have no build plate adhesion on this because it doesn't really need it for this part. But I do have a skirt, I do have build plate adhesion. I have a skirt and I'll show you that. But I don't think I need support on this. And so I'm not generating support because when I slice it, and we look at it, it will be 67 layers. But now I have the student name on it. And so upon printing, I can see the number of layers. I can take a look at the infill pattern. I really don't need support, but if I do enable support, I'll show you how that will work. And I slightly clicked on it and it moved, so I have to prepare it again. And so then again, I still have the same number of layers. And you can look at each layer as the part is built and you can make adjustments for it. If you wanted something to be stronger, you could add more infill density. And we'll talk about that as we progress through the course. But essentially it's a 67 layer model. And now it has the student name on it. And then, like I was saying, we don't particularly need build plate adhesion, support, but we would like some build plate adhesion because it primes the nozzle for the first layer. And so to get a good print, I typically will set this for skirt. We could always bring it up a bit. In other words, have better build plate adhesion, but then there's a little bit of post-processing. And this is common and needed depending on the part and the materials, because sometimes what will happen in large prints is the parts will start to come off the build plate and then we'll get kind of a bird's nest because the part will lose alignment. Alrighty, so this is how to bring the part into the slicer. As we look at the part, if I wanted to put support on, what I would do is I would say generate support, and it will figure it out for us. We don't necessarily have to go through all of these details right now. And so as we look at it, I like to work in the custom setup because I can see everything, but I don't necessarily have to change everything. I'm going to prepare that. And then you can see even the computer itself knows it doesn't need support. And so as we look at it, we can uncheck support. Prepare it. And then you can set the name here so that the G-code file has your name on it. So I typically will tell people to put their initials here or their student name on it. And then I'll save it to the removable drive, or I'll save it to your document. And that will create the G-codes that will run the printer. And we'll show that in a different video. Alrighty. That ends this video on how to add a name or a logo to your Project 4.